on human rights at home. Our moderator today is Semhar Okbazion, who I am proud to call a colleague in the center. She's the Assistant Director of the Office of International Services. And Semhar advises students and the university particularly on non-immigrant visa matters such as, and you'll love this list, H-1Bs, TNs, E3s, J-1s, and F-1 visas. That's a big portfolio. She's responsible for filing the employment-based visa sponsorship paperwork for university staff and faculty, as well as advising international students and scholars, among other things. She has a JD from Eritrea and 2 LLM Master of Law degrees from American University in Washington, D.C. It gives me great pleasure to turn this over to Semhar and welcome everyone to this exciting discussion. And we look forward to your participation. We'll have question and answer at the end if there's a little time. And Semhar, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Ronnie. Good afternoon, everyone. Before I begin, I would like to thank you all for taking a time out of your busy schedules to join us as we continue the conversation around racial injustice to increase our awareness of the unique experiences of our Black students and scholars. As you may remember, the first panel of the series talked about why we don't apply human rights standards for racial injustice incidents in the US, and experts weighed in their opinion. In this second panel, we will engage with our panelists on a conversation about their lived and observed experiences as Black students and scholars in the US and while they attend UMB, since some of them have attended UMB. This session is meant to personify the unique experiences faced by Black students and scholars from different backgrounds and to showcase the diversity that exists within Blackness. Today's discussions are meant merely to increase awareness, and any statements said should be construed as such and not aiming at any individual or unit at UMB. With that being said, I would like to introduce our panelists. We have here with us today 5 very well-accomplished Black women. And I'll start with Oyebola Babare, or Bola, is a international nursing student. Bola obtained her first bachelor's degree in Nigeria, and she attended 2 schools here in the US before joining UMB. Bola is excited to graduate in December with a nursing degree. Next to her is Dr. Olufunke Sohan. Dr. Sohan is an advanced practice pharmacist at the Center for Innovative Pharmacy Solutions at the University of Maryland School of Pharmacy, where she serves as the lead pharmacist with the Mobile Integrated Health Community Paramedicine Program, as well as a preceptor for pharmacy students and residents. She has worked on various interdisciplinary teams across numerous practice settings, providing services to high-risk and vulnerable patients in the Baltimore area. Dr. Sohan has a master's of pharmacy degree from Aston University in Birmingham, UK, and a doctor of pharmacy degree from Shenandoah University, Winchester. Next to her is Dr. Shaila Butler, who's soon going to be a doctor, not yet a doctor. Shaila is a senior student at the University of Maryland School of Dentistry. Shaila is very involved with student organizations. She is the current president of Academy of General Dentistry Community Service, chair for her graduating class, active national member of the Minority Students Dental Organization, Student National Dental Association, and was a 2019-2020 graduate of ISLSI's President's Student Leadership Institute. Her passion is community service, servicing the local West Baltimore community and foreign countries, having participated in community service projects in Nairobi, Kenya, and Cusco, Peru. And we also have with us today Dr. Vonetta Edwards. Dr. Edwards is a staff scientist in the Institute of Genomic Science within the School of Medicine. She immigrated from Guyana and received her higher education training in the US, culminating in a molecular and cellular biology PhD from our sister campus at College Park. Her research encompasses women's health issues with a focus on the role of vaginal microbiome in sexually transmitted infections. Vonetta is also involved in social justice work through her parish, focusing on immigration and racial justice issues. Last but not least is Nana Tefua. Nana is a UMB School of Law alumnus, and she's originally from Ghana. While at UMB, she was a President's Fellow, and in that role, she co-authored a white paper on expanding global literacy on campus. She is currently in the process of becoming barred in Ghana, and she seeks to practice law in an international scale. Shiloh Butler just emailed me. She is running a little late, but she'll be joining us shortly. So before I move on, I would like to say a couple housekeeping items. We'll do our best to leave, like Bonnie mentioned, a few minutes for Q&A at the end. If you have any questions, put it in the chat box. You can send it privately, Bonnie, or just put it in the general chat box. If you want to share ideas for future events like this, you can also let us know by putting your ideas in the chat box. So I'll move on to my first question. And my first question is, what does being Black in the US mean to you? And how do you identify? African, Black, Black American, etc. So I'll start with Dr. Edwards. She's the first one that I see on my screen.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. So that's an interesting question. And being here for a prolonged period of time, it's sort of changed in some ways. So culturally, I identify as Caribbean. My formative years were spent there. My identity was developed there. But I've long realized that when it comes to racial issues, especially in the US, we all sort of fall under the umbrella of Black. The nuances of African American, African Caribbean, when it comes to, I'll say, negative stereotypes, we all sort of get bumped together. And so even though people sometimes believe that the Black experience in the US is singular, it is not. And so I guess to me, I'll say being Black in the US is learning how to navigate some of these assumptions and stereotypes while still being able to be true to myself and to my culture.
Oh, sorry, I was mute. Bola, can you continue? You're mute, Bola.
Okay. So being Black to me was a strange thing when I came to US, because like all my life back home in Nigeria, I identify as myself. I identify as a Nigerian, then an African. But when I came here, I remember the first day, the first time I went to school to fill some forms. And they kind of like gave me the form. And when it came to racial or ethnicity, I was kind of like looking Black / African American. I'm like, my skin is not Black and I'm not an American. So I was like, what do I choose? And it was like, okay, you are Black. I said, wow, this is so, it was like a change, a new thing to me when I came to US that I'm Black. So it's kind of like, just like what Vanessa said, it's kind of like a box where you have to like fit in, even though you've never, or you've not thought of yourself as being Black before. So being Black to me like started when I came to US.
Thank you. Nana? You have to unmute yourself first. There you go.
Hi, thank you for having me. So I think being Black in the US for me, I thought about it a bit, and I would say the one word that came to mind was just different. I just want to echo what Dr. Edwards said. It's not a singular experience. It has been a very dynamic experience. And when I say different, I try to use the most neutral word I could think of, because being Black comes with positives and negatives, which is why I just chose the word different. The positive, I would say, is just being unique. I mean, first of all, I identify as Ghanaian American, American by citizenship, Ghanaian by birth, and just growing up there. And I would say the positive, like I was saying, is just being unique. It's in my name, it's in my family's accents, it's in our clothes. So those are, I would say, the joyful parts of being that way in a different country. You're different, you're unique. But I would say the negatives is all the burdens that come along with it. Sometimes being viewed as less than, being looked down upon. So I think just to sum it up, my experience being Black in the US has just been really dynamic. Some days it's great and some days it's not. And I think that's the same for everyone. So everyone here.
Dr. Sohan?
Thank you for having me. You know, being Black to me in the US became my experience about 10 years ago when I relocated from England to the United States. So I wasn't born here and definitely have not experienced the generational wounds or trauma of being Black. However, I have experienced, you know, some biases, but it's nothing compared, you know, to someone that was born here and that have their roots go back generations. Just like Nana said, being Black, it's bifurcated in two lenses. One of opportunities and the other of challenges. Opportunities meaning that there are, you know, programs that are channeled towards people of color, minorities, you know, Black people, like affirmative action and things like that. So there could be opportunities and positives of being Black. However, the challenges, you know, of being Black is that some people might make assumptions about you. They have preconceived notions about your intentions and your motives, and they sometimes would make decisions based on these assumptions. So for me, I identify as Black, originally from Nigeria, but I feel like when we use African American, it's not all encompassing. So you could be an African that immigrated to the United States, not an American citizen. So I don't feel like the African American it's all encompassing for Black people. So I identify as Black.
Thank you, Dr. Sohan. Lauren, Shaila just texted me saying that she joined in, but she's a participant. Is there any way to invite her to a panelist?
Yep, I'll take care of her.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, thank you. Because I would love to hear her response for this first question. Maybe we can start, you know, okay, so she's here. Shaila, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear everyone just fine. Everyone's responses were great. Sorry for the tardiness, besides just getting out of school and then trying to find a link and all of that. But yes, so I don't know if I'm visible because I don't, yeah,
You
I don't
are
think
visible. We can see your picture.
Oh, okay, great. I wanted to start video, but it's not letting me. So anyways, nonetheless, my response was a lot like Nana's about just being different. My word that I thought of was unique in that there's just so many different colors and there's such a wide spectrum of what being Black means. And I think that's what I really embrace about this and love about my Blackness is it's my version of it and everyone's version is different. And that's just what I love about it in general, just how unique and different we are.
Thank you. Those are really good responses. And I can, you know, all of your answers resonate with me because as an African who came here to study in the US and struggled with the, you know, the question of identity in several forms, I understand the struggle. And like you said, you know, I also identify as Black, as African, and as an Eritrean. Okay, so I'll move on to my second question, which is the biggest question we have for today, and it has two parts. The first part is, how does systemic racism and prejudices and stereotypes made against Black people affect you as a Black student or professional, and how have you responded? And the second part is, for those of you who are juggling multiple responsibilities, could be family and work, how are you navigating expectations of productive work working through two pandemics, COVID-19 and systemic racism? And Dr. Edwards, you can go ahead and get started.
So this was an interesting question. It took me some time to think of and sort of try to formulate a complete answer. And I think the first thing I came up with is that how I respond to individual events and prejudices and stereotypes sort of is tied to what my state of mind is at the time that they happened. As in sometimes it happens and I'm just sort of in the whatever and move on. And then other times it just gets to me and irritates me and irks me. But at the same time, you've got to keep your composure in how you visually respond and what your response to the person is. Um, I will say overall, it is quite tiring and frustrating and annoying because you seem to always have to ensure that you present as non-threatening. You have to moderate your tone, even if you're angry, so you don't come off as the angry Black woman. And then you also seem as if sometimes you feel as if you have to do extra to prove that not just that you belong, but you're pulling your weight through the work that you're doing. And overall, after a while, it just builds up and sometimes it just gets to you. Um, and, it's stereotypes come from, and I guess the longer I've been here, I've realized they've been perpetuated by the media in the way stuff is seen in shows, on TV, even in plays, in songs. And so you're sort of battling against you as this one person. Well, yes, maybe some people do that, but the entirety of Black people don't do either A, B, or C. I know there've been different experiences at different times. I think we've all probably had the experience of what I call additional attention from salesperson when you go into stores, especially the higher end that they are. Um, I've had circumstances when I used to live off of one of the university routes where I'd get off the shuttle bus, the shuttle bus, and there'd be people clutching their purses and crossing the street. I'm 5'4" on a good day. I mean, there's only so threatening I can be. And it's not just relegated to late nights where you're just hyper vigilant. And sometimes you're just like, what about me tells you that I'm about to try to snatch your purse or whatever it is? And sometimes I just go home and get really upset and I'm like, okay, we're gonna have a glass of wine and we shall de-stress. Professionally, it comes with the assumptions that, well, let's put it this way. I've been taken for a graduate student, a lab tech, administrative staff. No one has ever assumed that I'm a PI. And is it that there are just not enough Black PIs on campus, that it just doesn't cross somebody's mind that somebody who looks like me can be a PI? I was once told when I'm like, no, I'm a postdoc. Oh, you look too young to have a PhD. And like, how do you respond to that? It's like, I believe that's a nice cover that you made, but I can't prove that that's not what you were thinking. And it's stuff like that where, sometimes you just decided it's just not worth the energy to invest to deal with that person. And sometimes you're like, well, thank you for the compliment, but I've had a PhD for X number of years. And that's why I said it depends on my personal mood and frame of mind at the time, depending on how I personally internalize it. And as I've written down here, like I've long grown accustomed to being one of a few Black people at any conference I've been to. For international conferences, sometimes there's a contingent from like an African nation, so that boosts our numbers. But it's just when you're one of a few, you feel as if you're representing the entirety of the race, in the sense that any misstep, you get what I call the aha moment, where they're just waiting, well, aha, I knew this because, and you fill in whichever negative stereotype they want to put in there. And so for me, it's just tiring, frustrating, and annoying dealing with them. But you know that you have to, because you then have to say, well, no, maybe you have that stereotype, but this is not what it is. And hopefully the next Black person that they meet, they will say, well, okay, well, maybe we met this one and maybe they're not all like this. And you make it easier for the next person, or at the very least the next generation, so that our kids are not coming up and having to deal with exactly the same things we're going through and exactly the same assumptions. Okay, I think I've spiel long enough, but my one, I guess, additional thing is that based on where our campus is geographically, surrounded by so many historical Black colleges and universities, it's a little bit I don't want to say daunting, but frustrating that there are some departments on campus that don't have a single Black faculty. And I'm going to leave it there.
Okay. Shaila, do you want to continue that?
Actually, a lot of what she said, I very much agree with. And I guess not just in dental school, but just navigating life in general. So since she already touched on that, I guess specifically regarding just dental school and being where I am in education, yes, not many of us. My graduating class only has 18 Black and brown people. And we're like, oh man, that's a lot. But no, I mean, it's really sad that we get excited about just 18, but I mean, it's kind of the world we're living in now. But as far as personal experiences, one time I was in clinic seeing a patient, junior and senior year, you're seeing patients in the dental school, and we were treatment planning for the patient, and they had a lot going on. And the faculty, I came over and told them, this needs to be done, what can we do? This, and this are the options. And I was talking to the patient too, like, these are your options. And I guess to put it blatantly, one was like a Honda of treatment plans, and the other was like a Mercedes-Benz of treatment plans. And, you know, of course, usually the more pricier option is the better option, the more stable option, whatever. But the faculty, you know, said while the patient was sitting there, a patient that looked like me, mind you, and she said, oh, but they can't afford that. Let's go with the other one. And I was like, with the patient sitting right here, like, we're just gonna assume we think we know how much money they have to spend on their teeth. Like, I was floored. And when the faculty walked away, I didn't even bring it up to the patient. The patient was like, does she talk to like that to all the patients? And I was like, I don't even have an answer for that. Like, I just could not believe that. And then to think, this is what you think about a patient that looks like me. What do you think about me? Like, how does that translate? And especially in educational realms, I definitely agree with what Dr. Edwards was saying, was that you feel like, you know, not only do we have to work so hard and our ancestors had to press so hard for us to get into the spaces that we now occupy, but now it's like, I have to prove to you that I'm competent and capable to be where I am. Like, yeah, I do a lot, and a lot of extra, because it's almost, I always feel like I have to prove that I belong here, that I know just as much as my classmates. It is tiring, but I guess it's just like you're kind of numb to it at this point. I'm used to having to navigate the space like this. I'm used to having to put myself out there and answer the questions and ask questions and be active and participate, because I need to prove that I'm here, I exist, and I am also just as intelligent as the rest of my classmates. Just because that's usually the stereotype.
Yeah. And Dr. Sohan?
I think I agree with what Dr. Edwards and Shaler have already said. I think that the stereotypes comes from the fact that you think that you might be better off than somebody else, even though you might be different. You know, doesn't mean that you are better off. It means that you see yourself as you know, better esteemed than somebody else. That's where those stereotypes come from. And you know, just like Sheila already said, I have my personal experiences. You know, when I had my second child in the hospital, and my daughter had jaundice, so that meant that she had to stay in the hospital for a little, you know, more than 2 days. And the nurse walked up to me in my room and said, well, you know, we would have to discharge you. And I said, well, no, you can't discharge me because my daughter is here. You know, can I not just stay with her in the hospital? And first thing, she looked at me and she just said, oh no, your insurance is not gonna pay for that. And she just assumed that I was a Medicaid patient. And, you know, just like Sheila had said, all the assumptions, no, you can't afford to stay an extra day. You know, and I was like, did you do the checks? You know, the way I was treated just because I was Black, because of the color of my skin, not knowing who I was. She didn't even know that in that hospital, I was doing my internship. My husband was a medical student. So when then she saw, you know, the staff from the pharmacy coming up to see me, oh my God, her look, she was frightened. Like, you know, she didn't expect that. And all of a sudden the care was receiving change magically. Oh, what do you need? You can stay an extra day. And sometimes it makes you ask yourself, why? Why do I have to introduce myself and let you know that I am a person of influence before you start to treat me with the respect that I deserve? That respect should have been given to me even before you know who I was. And unfortunately for me, when I go to a place, I have to introduce myself. This is who I am. Like for example, when I go to my kids' school, because, there's just this stereotype that this grouping, oh, Black people, maybe the parents, single parenting and things like that. So when I go to my parents' school, I have to go with my husband, introduce ourselves, Dr. and Dr. Mrs., this is who we are, so that we get the treatment that we deserve. But unfortunately, that's the world that we're in, right now. And, someone says, racism exists everywhere. It says it's like a dust in the air. And until you shine the sun or the light in on it, that's when you know that it's actually everywhere. And I really appreciate things like, these types of forums that, gives an air to what's happening, so that when we see it, we call it out for what it is. I have so many experiences. Which ones am I going to share? My husband is a doctor. He's Black like me. In his workplace, he's been mistaken for environmental services, just because he wasn't robed, dressed like a doctor. People just assume when they look at you, they start you from the bottom of the ladder. They're like, oh, are you this? Oh, no, are you this? Why don't you think, oh, are you a doctor? Just by seeing. I mean, we've heard, on the media of, Black women on flights, introduce themselves as doctors, and, even the flight attendants don't believe. They want to see your credentials. They want to make sure that you are who you say you are. That imposter syndrome, like, oh, you don't look like it. What does a doctor look like? Another experience that I have is I had a family member, apply for a position, an executive level position, as a director of asset management in one of the foremost commercial real estate investment companies in the country. And just before his interview, he had looked on their website, not one Black person, everyone in their leadership team above the director level, all white. And he had been through stages of the interview. He got to the very last step of the interview, and he said to himself, I'm just going to take a chance. I'm going to ask an uncomfortable question. And what was the question? He asked, the manager to be is, have you ever managed an African-American before? And he adjusted himself on the seat and admitted that that was an uncomfortable question. But why is that uncomfortable? If you haven't, just say, so it's a mindset. This stereotypes comes from the mind. He said, his response was, oh, very uncomfortable question, but I'll attempt to answer it. I have never, managed an African-American before. Something to the lines of, oh, even when we recruit from schools, we don't come across Black talent. So are you telling me that there are no Black talents out there? There are, but for that firm, it just wasn't a priority. So it's like what you prioritize. So when we talk about, these stereotypes, how, for me, it's how do you respond? My mother, I'm African. I have the African blood in me. She tells me that results removes insults. I take that everywhere I go. So I know that, anywhere I go, I always have to prove myself. And unfortunately, you have to proving yourself sometimes means you have to work twice as hard as your compared white person. And that's the reality of where we're in. You have to make sure that, I can do this, you're working hard. And unfortunately, sometimes the hard work and the diligence does not translate into a commensurate reward. You could be the best, but because someone is judging you, not because of what you're worth, but because of the color of your skin, and you still don't get that promotion. So, how do you respond to this? I know that, as a person of faith, my vision drives me, gives me the strength, to cope with these types of things. And, that's how I handle it personally.
Thank you, Dr. Sohan. Nana, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, so I think I'm going to speak to the how I navigated these experiences aspect, and also the second part of the question about juggling productivity amidst everything that's going on. So I'll just briefly start with my time at the law school. So I was in UMB School of Law, and I feel like there, everyone was very politically correct. Now, I will give a disclaimer, and just to be very honest, I am the type to let it roll off my shoulder and try not to notice it. So I try not to be too sensitive to things. And I think it's really a coping mechanism, because if you take everything to heart, you really won't even get through the day, right? So at UMB, maybe it's a lawyer thing, but I found the students at the School of Law were very politically correct, and I didn't have any issues there, quite frankly. And it's funny, when I was preparing for this panel, I spoke to some of my Black friends from the School of Law just to get their opinions about, like, what was their experience? Because I'm the one who would say I honestly had no racial issues there. And they were like, what are you talking about? Stuff was happening all the time. How did you not see this? And it's because I realized I was kind of running away from it. I go to class, I go home. I don't try and talk too much to people, maybe for fear of just, some of these experiences. So I wouldn't dare put in braids. I'm not the type to poke, just try and fit in as much as possible. And that was my experience at the law school. And I guess that kept me sailing by. But when I got into the workplace, and I actually was a fellow at UMMS, in a legal fellow at UMMS. And there, it sort of hit me in the face. In school, you're with sort of like-minded, educated people who may not outwardly say the wrong things to you. But in the workplace, I got comments, and being Ghanaian, I got comments like, why would your parents name you that before, right in my face? Who would name their child Nana, right? They would say that because it's grandma here. So, why would your parents name you that? And I think it hit me then, when people blatantly give you the, unlike everyone else, things like people clutching their purse at the bus stop, I honestly wouldn't even notice it. Maybe because I was trying not to notice it, but literally would look the other way. But when people are blatantly telling you certain things, I think at that point, that's when you, like Dr. Edwards said, go home, drink wine, and try and make it to the next day. So, with everything that has blown up, and it's interesting, I thought about, currently I'm studying in Ghana to become barred there as well. And I thought about, why did I go back to Ghana? And I think part of the reason was just feeling so other in the workplace. And I guess it's a privilege to be able to just go back to Ghana when I'm feeling other here, but just a longing for familiarity. And I realized maybe, again, I was running away from the experiences I was having in America that I wasn't addressing head on, and just wanting to go back home and stuff like that. And I did want to touch on the last part of the question, because I don't think anyone really did, but juggling the two pandemics. And it's funny, when I thought I was going to Ghana, I thought I was going away from all of this. And when I got there, I realized how much of a global reach the racial unrest in America has, the pandemic, obviously. But I was born and raised in Ghana, growing up there, studying there when I was 6, 7, 8 years old. I wasn't aware of my Blackness. It was just, just normal. But studying there now, this year, was so different. And it was, it really has, the racial unrest really has crossed borders. So much so that being in Ghana, which I thought I was running away to, it's there. We had the protests for George Floyd were going on in Ghana as well, outside the US Embassy. So yeah, I would say that I guess moral of my story is everything catches up with you. And I guess it's sooner or later, all our experiences are diverse, but sooner or later, we're going to have to address these things together, whether you're Ghanaian American, Nigerian American, Black American, however you identify. Yeah.
Thank you, Nana. I would love to hear, about the reaction of, Ghanaians or people in Ghana at the time of the death of George Floyd. But for the sake of time, I'm going to move to the next questions. And hopefully at the end, if we have time, I will ask you that question. So my third question is for those, that have studied outside the US, and I think we have quite a bit here. How have your higher education experiences overseas differ from your experiences you have in the US? And Dr. Sohan, you could probably start because you've studied in 2 other countries.
Thank you, Semhar. So for me, I was born in Nigeria. I did my schooling there up until higher ed. And then I moved over to England, to the United Kingdom. That was where I did my undergrad, got my master's in pharmacy before moving over to the US and getting my PharmD here. My experiences, I'll talk more, because you probably want to know about higher ed. It was very similar between the 2 countries, between the United Kingdom and the United States. I studied in Birmingham. The population is predominantly Asians. So maybe that made it kind of like better, because in a class of about like 120 people, there were only about 5 or 6 Black people. So for me, I like the fact that, I was different from a lot of the other people. I could be me, I could shine. Just like Nana had said, a lot of people struggled with my name, try to give me other names that my mother and my father didn't give me. Like Olufunke, oh, I can't say that, can I shorten it? Can we call you O? Can we call you Lou? No, you can't. You have to say my name. Because if I can pronounce your name, I think you should be able to pronounce my name. So in terms of like similarities or differences, there's not much of a difference. It was just the diversity of my class. When here, and I studied in Virginia, we had more representative of Black population in pharmacy school. So that's the only difference that I would say in terms of like the education and how good it was, across, I had great learning experiences across the 2 countries. So I can't really, point out to a lot of differences. It was just the diversity between the 2 countries.
Okay. I know, Bola, you studied in Nigeria and also studied at 2 other universities or colleges before coming to UMB. So could you share your experiences with us?
Yeah. So I had my first bachelor's degree in Nigeria. Actually, it was in biology. And when I did biology, I did it not because I wanted to do it. I actually wanted to do nursing from the start. But there's kind of like, I can't speak for everyone, but the school I went to, there's kind of like politics going on there. Like, it's about who you know, not about what you know. You might have the good grade, you might have what it takes for you to get into a particular department, but you may not get it. If some people, even that have maybe poorer grades than you, know better people, know IO people, they have people of influence that they can connect with. So that was what happened. I wanted to do nursing back home, but I couldn't get into nursing. Then I had to like pick my second choice, which was biology. Then I was like, okay, biology, nursing, all the same science, will be fine. Although I had the option to like wait a year, because the education system in my school is, if you want to do nursing, you have to like start with nursing from day 1. As opposed to being in the US, that you can take your prerequisites for 2 years, then you can like, okay, I want to do nursing. It's not like that. If you want to do nursing, you have to be doing the nursing from day 1. So they gave me the option of staying 1 year extra so I could get into nursing. But then I have my other friends that were like, they were gonna be ahead of me. So I was like, no, I don't want to be behind by a year. So I took my second choice, which was biology, and I graduated and I got a job in an hospital. I was working in the lab. I became the manager of my lab before leaving Nigeria. So I was like, okay, that was it. Then when I came to US, I was like, I began talking with people, and they kind of explained to me how you can get anything you want to do in the US. Like, if you want to do it, you just have to like maybe apply to different schools, you're going to get it. Then my nursing passion came back to life. That's when I knew that whatever you have in mind, if it's your passion, it's not going to die. It may be like there, like it's silent, quiet, but it's not dead. So I was like, okay, then I'm going to do my nursing. So now it's been 4 years that I'm into it, and I didn't regret. Sometimes I look at it like it's a waste of time or something like that, but I didn't, like, for the most part, I appreciate the fact that I can do what I like eventually. So being in the US has afforded me the opportunity to actually do what I want. And you know, everyone can go to school at any age in the US. Back home, if you're like 30 years old and you're going to, maybe you starting another undergrad, people will be like, well, what are you doing? You know, like there's this like mentality that, okay, you have to like do it at the early stage. But here, even 50 years old people, I was in class with some people that are as old as my parents, like 60, 70, you know, people just do what they like here. And which is kind of fascinating that people can achieve their dreams no matter, regardless of who they are and the age. And going to school for me here, I've been to 2 other schools before, where I took my prerequisite before I came to UMB. And one thing I appreciate about UMB is the vast resources that is available. Like, I know there's a lot of resources that even if you're not aware, you're going to get lost in the resources. But there's another aspect of it about diversity is like, my other schools have more diverse people. I've been to CCBC before. There's a lot of white folks there, but you see a lot of other, you know, blacks, Asians, like many of them. So it's been like when I came to UMB, I have to kind of like look around. I was like, really? It's not really as diverse as other places that I've been to. So that's one thing I would like to like point out. But every other thing, UMB is fantastic. It's a good place to be. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing your experiences, Bola. And now we move on to the last question, which is the elephant in the room. Could you share anything that UMB should be doing to promote the inclusion and empowerment of Black students and scholars? And we're having, if you notice, we're having only a few people respond to questions just so we could respect your time and finish on time. So for this question, you know, all of you, if you have any ideas on how we could promote an inclusion and empowerment of Black students and scholars on campus, we would love to hear from you. And Dr. Edwards, you can start.
Thank you, Semhar. So I do believe the university tries to have some inclusion, and I think in some cases it works. I think it depends a lot on the buy-ins of the senior leadership for, I guess, specific schools would be my take. But for me, what I really do love is the CURE program that they have, where they're exposing young children in West Baltimore to science, to STEM. STEM has become a touchstone word. We're like, okay, we need more diversity in STEM. But then they try to obtain that in seniors in high school or, you know, freshmen in college. Love of science to me begins way earlier than that. And if you don't have the love of science, even if you're being given, oh, you can have this scholarship to do biology, if you've never been exposed to truly to biology before, you're not going to take it. So there goes this diversity plan to begin with. So I do love the CURE program. However, what I'm not sure of is if there's a continuation. So you've got a CURE program for, I think it's 6 to 12 graders. But I don't think there's stuff like high school internships, college internships, where you can get students from, again, I say, we're in Baltimore. Just the location, kids come home for summer from wherever they're going to school, they can try to have an internship. We're surrounded by historical Black colleges and universities. Maybe we can set up some sort of program with them where we say, you know, maybe every year, every summer, you can have 2 or 3 students come. And I think what it needs to be is a set program, not just, well, this PI doesn't mind doing that, and so somebody will come to the lab. I think it needs to be a decision made by leadership that every year, certain number, 10 students from wherever, from Oregon or something, will come to campus and work in labs. And then the departments will figure out how to make that happen. Because to me, I don't think it's necessarily fair where if your parent happens to be faculty here, or you know somebody who's faculty here, and therefore, you know, your kid gets to do an internship. Great, it looks amazing on the CV. But what about students who just don't have that side door to come in, essentially? And while I guess this is more recruitment than empowerment per se, recruitment increases numbers. Numbers increase your voice. That increases empowerment. And that will lead to actual resources being given to programs that provide empowerment and inclusion, rather than just, you know, you're trying to be, you know, the one voice in the wind. If you have a choir, then they're more likely to hear you. Thank you.
Thank you. Shaila?
As far as the student experience, I just think that we should have more groups that, I don't want to say target us, but that put us together as far as Black and brown people, that allows us to realize, you know, things like this. Like my experience is I'm not going through this alone, and I'm not the only one who's had someone say that to me or that feels that way. Like I feel like Dr. Edwards was just saying, we are definitely empowered by numbers. And I really love how in the dental school, our numbers are small. There's not many of us, but we make it a point of through all 4 classes at the dental school that we all come together as a group. And most of us, I would say a good like 99% of us are in the Student National Dental Association, which is the minority students group in the dental school. And ever since my freshman year, it's been a very active group. We always have events and socials when we can, and we have mentorship programs. So like when you come in as a D1, you get a either second, third, or fourth year as a mentor. And again, just strengthening that bond that, okay, we're here, we look out for each other because no one else is going to. We are going to help each other out. We're going to band together. And I feel that that brings more of us into the dental school, that you have a support system here. You're not doing this by yourself. It's, you know, it's cute. Like when we got the little Black Lives Matter flag outside of the library, and we have the little rainbow flags outside in the student center. Like, that's cool. Like, yeah, sure. We accept y'all here. We love y'all here. But once we get here, then what? I feel like that's a lot of where most of these programs lack, is once we get the minority students here, how do we make them feel supported? And I think student groups are the best way to do that.
Thank you for that comment, Shayla. Dr. Sohan?
Thanks, Semhar. I think that the ship, you know, has been set on the right course to addressing, you know, the issue of systemic racism. I think UMB is doing a pretty good job. Are we there yet? No, we're on the path, but we're not there yet. I would definitely want to see more people of color, more Black people in leadership positions across the university. And one of the ways that we can do that is identify talents and build them up. You know, professional career development that's geared towards people of color, you know, Black people, mentoring, you know, mentoring as an option, you know, having, you know, a lot of us want to get to the top of our careers, and we don't want to be limited, not just because we can, but just because of the color of our skin. You know, so making sure that there are mentoring opportunities for people already in leadership, you know, not just people of color, to volunteer or to want to mentor other people that don't look like them, you know, to get to where they are. Because that's the whole point, you know, there's a lot of room in this, you know, in the sky for stars to shine. So because, you know, we can all rise, you know, to the top. So for me, I think mentoring is a big thing. We need to have tracks, you know, for talents to, when you identify a talent, you know, and there has to be buy-in, you know, from leadership from the top. You know, if you notice somebody and you notice that this person is very good, their work ethic is excellent, you know, try and help them, you know, to get to the top. And sometimes, you know, I think that, you know, things like having a set program in place where you know that, okay, I know, you know, I have leadership abilities, but how do I go about it? You know, so having tracks in place that would make it easier to navigate that path to the top.
Great, and Paula?
Yeah, thank you so much, Semhar, for bringing this up. So I'm going to talk briefly about associations that we have on ground. I know a lot of us, I'm speaking from student perspective, a lot of us are so like overwhelmed with our classes and stuff like that. So most of the time we don't even think of socializing or maybe engaging in association. Like for me particularly, I would be like, no, migrate first. And I think that's the most important thing, because no one cares if you are engaging or you're having community things going on, or you're, but if you're failing, no one cares about every other thing. So the first priority is get your grade on point. But then there's a saying that says, all works without play makes Jack a dull boy. So there should be a moment where we gather with other people of like-minded. And there's this, I'm going to talk about this association that we have, United Students of African Descent. So if you identify as Black, African, immigrant, if you identify as such, there's this association that we can join, we can collaborate, and we can share our minds. And we're thinking of maybe creating a Facebook group where we can all like go there, ask questions. People can give answers to our questions. So we want more people to be engaged. We want to engage each other so we can have more, we can come to like more visibility, because we think that, oh, I'm just the only one here. No, you are not the only one. Like there are a couple of other people just like you. So if you'd like to join, you can reach out to the coordinator of this program, and she can direct you on how to go about it. And also there's International Student Organization as well. That's how I got to meet Semhar when I went to the International Student Office, and I had a problem that time with getting on-campus job, getting Social Security, and ideally, they didn't want to give me that opportunity. They were arguing that this and that, but she stood in for me. She was on the phone for a very long time, and she stood in. At the end of the day, the recruiter was like, okay, I can see that the school is for you, like they are behind you. So this kind of things, we should not neglect this kind of opportunity that we can get from other people, from every resource that's available on campus. So that's my thing.
Thank you, Paula. And Nana?
Okay, so it's interesting we're in an election year again, because 4 years ago, I was a 2L at the School of Law, and our current president had just been elected, and it was polarizing. I think that's just a fact. A lot of people were unhappy, a lot of people were happy, but it was a polarizing time. I think we can all agree on that. So the next day after the results were announced, I think it was hard for some people to come to class, but we had to go anyway because it's school. Went to my constitutional law class, and our professor said, we're not doing class today. I'm going to give you guys the floor to tell me how you feel. And I think that safe space was really what everyone needed. No one felt like being cold called on that day. And I think that what I'm getting at is, I think everyone's discussed all the things we can do at institutional levels, having groups for minorities, etc. But I think that the big difference and what made my experience at UMB really great compared to, like I said, friends I spoke to who had mixed reactions, was the quality of the people there. When do you get a professor who says, we're not doing class today, I'm giving you the space to talk about your feelings? And I think that is a huge thing, the people I meet on a day-to-day basis, because as Bola mentioned, I don't know if I have time to go to the USAC meetings as a student. I don't know if I have time to do that. I don't know if I would have taken advantage of it. So I can't sit here and say, let's have more of that. What really made the difference for me was the people. I think Professor Rothorn is here. She mentored me a lot during law school, and she was really great. And I think those are two people the professor who gave us the floor that day and Professor Rothorn, those were two people who really transformed my experience. And I'll always remember it. I wasn't part of any groups. I wasn't part, nothing like that, but just having good people all around, or interacting with the right people, I guess that's what you could say. So I think that we can achieve this at the school by really looking at who we're recruiting, not just filling in numbers of ex-Black people come in or ex-Indian people come in, but looking at, are these people that we're recruiting as staff faculty or that we're admitting as students, are they culturally competent? Are we looking at that? Not just do they have straight A's, but are we letting racists in to the school, to be blunt? Are people open-minded? Like, are we looking at that in the applications and in the recruitment process? For me, I'm looking at it on just I guess, myopic level. What are the people like? Because that's who you interact with every day. I can go to groups and we can talk about the racism in the school all day long, but why don't we change the people? Why don't we make sure the people at the school are just better? And I think that we can tackle that by looking at the criteria with which we admit people into the school at all levels, from student to, dean. Just looking at what kind of people are we letting in here? Are they making the place better? Are we making each other feel better on the day-to-day level? And so, yeah.
Thank you, Nana. And this brings to, this is the last question that I had for all of you. And I think it's 1:00 here. So for respect of your time, we will conclude our webinar here, unless someone has an urgent or a quick question. I would like to thank our panelists for engaging with us today on this important topic, and to all of you who joined us. I hope that we will continue having these conversations and continue to make UMB a great place to work. Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you.
You're welcome.